Yes, I'm Sylvia Santana, the state senator for Detroit, Dearborn Heights, and Allen Park. The reason why I got into elected office is because I wanted to help my community to build businesses on a commercial corridor. I was an underwriter for Prosperous Detroit, where we work with immigrants as well as unbankable individuals to help them to access capital. And I really wanted to support the community and build the opportunities for individuals here in our state. One of the things that I find with law enforcement is that in today's times, they are not getting the respect they require as public servants. They're there to protect our communities. And one of the things that we really want to do is tool them to make sure that they can support continuing our public safety in our communities. And oftentimes in my district, where I have a number of people who English is their second language, this opportunity to help support them having training to be able to communicate with those individuals is key to make sure that when they are stopped by law enforcement or when there is a communication with law enforcement, that they're able to communicate effectively. And so with English being a second language for a lot of my district, this type of legislation and policy will help support that interaction with our public safety servants. One of the biggest things that I think happens with that interaction is that obviously law enforcement is trained to follow certain procedures based off of NCOs and what they've been trained within their cadet trainings. However, when you're out in the field actually putting that practice into place, oftentimes there's, these communication barriers. And if a law enforcement officer is trying to communicate with that individual, but maybe they're deaf or hard of hearing, it can be difficult for that individual to express that. Some of the challenges that I think we find in the state currently, which we have found in prior legislatures, is that some of our leaders in our state capitol believe that people should automatically learn how to speak English here in the state. And I think that when any immigrant population of people come to our state, obviously that takes a little time to learn the English language. And so whatever we can do as a state to make sure that those individuals have the access to government and civics and being able to communicate with government is key for their success in our state. I think one of the key things with any policy that we are looking at crafting here in the state of Michigan for becoming law is making sure that we have everyone at the table to provide their input on how implementation works and making sure that the law that we're putting in place is intended to do what we want it to do. And I think that having that training mechanism for our law enforcement agency is something that really we need to do. I've had conversation with chiefs across the board to talk about, what they believe is necessary for their law enforcement officers to be successful. And I think that is what makes a good policy, no matter what, is having everybody at the table. I remember talking to the deaf community and talking about putting something on the licensure to identify people who maybe perhaps don't speak English as a first language or maybe have a hearing issue, but talking to that community, that was not something that they wanted to identify because they felt that it would provide for a barrier for them. So having these discussions with all entities that are supporting legislation is key to making sure that we have a successful bill and law in place to help support the entire community collectively. One of the things I've obviously learned being a legislator here in Michigan is that culture eats policy every day. And if we don't take the time as, a community or as law enforcement agencies to understand the culture of that community, it's quite difficult to really be able to interact and have a communicative relationship. Training like what we're trying to propose here at the state level is really important. We're having people come to our state every day. For whether they come from a war-torn country, whether they're coming here as migrant workers, whether they're coming here as just visitors, and wanting to use this as a place where they eventually want to reside. We have to make sure that that public safety component is also a part of making sure that there's cultural intelligence around each community and each neighbor. And I think that that helps to support our law enforcement officers to make sound decisions and take away negative perceptions.